Hola, chicas. Welcome to Encuentras Your Voice podcast, where Latina voices are amplified by sharing their powerful journeys from ancestry to authenticity, giving voice to generations past, often silenced or erased, while showcasing the aha moment of our guests when they embraced their authenticity and soared into success. I'm your host, Consuelo Crosby, here with you every Wednesday at a new time in this season 8. Given our expanding global audience, con gusto, we are dropping new episodes just after midnight on Wednesdays. So no matter where you are in the world, we are together, leaning into the valuable stories that resonate with you, adding a place of belonging, and sharing resources that may help make life just that much easier. Plus, meet your next best amiga after hearing their story every week. Coming to you today from our second Encuentras Media studio in the Catalunya coast, bringing in many of our own ancestors in a warm embrace and celebrating the cultura, lovingly people forward. And that's what we have for you today. It's all about people. For today's guests, guiding them to their best life with a focus of joy and empowerment. But would you think of human resources in that sentiment? This conversation emphasizes the value of HR in businesses, but it doesn't stop there. It goes so much deeper to the rediscovery of personal power. And by the end, you'll understand the need for inclusive community design for each of us to feel seen, heard, and understood. And it's all because of the mindset of Georgette Cartagena, who brings her Puerto Rican heritage forward as founder and CEO of Algo Más HR, a consulting firm that prioritizes the employee experience as a catalyst for businesses to thrive. Georgette leverages her extensive background in human resources to work with companies on designing processes with their end user in mind, the employee. She carries an understanding of us all. In her words, every person's why is different. It's in this core acceptance that Georgette weaves solutions that benefit all the parties involved, especially employees. But it's no good if the companies aren't successful on their own. I tell you, if Georgette would run for political office, I would move to wherever she is to vote for her. This is the time we really need a mindset like Georgette's to unify us, help us appreciate one another, and work together to create our best lives for ourselves and generations to come. And the one thing about Georgette that you don't see coming? Well, it's going to make you love her even more. Lean in, get comfy, and get ready to meet your next best amiga. Welcome to Encuentras Your Voice podcast, Georgette. We're so happy to have you here, and thank you for sharing your time with us today. How are you doing?
Good. I am feeling many things today, but I'm excited to be here, and thank you for creating the space for me to be here. With the new election comes new policy changes, especially in the world of HR, having to stay on top of that while also making sure that my team is taken care of as well as my client.
Our timing for this recording is perfect. It's perfect because I did have those questions in regard to the DEI policies being retracted from a lot of businesses. And here you are being the point person for actually implementing and ensuring that companies are creating diversity in their organizations. But we will get to that, and it will be a joyful discussion because you are the one spearheading it. So let's, as we always do, get into our love of archiving our Latina diaspora and giving presence in this current day to our ancestors and what brought you here to this moment. So we'd love to hear your story.
So in terms of my story, right, it starts with my parents coming to Florida. I've lived in Florida my whole life. They came over from Puerto Rico, and growing up as an adult, I realized that we were kind of the transitional household where family members would come and live with us while they were getting their footing settled in order to move elsewhere, either stay in Florida or maybe relocate for another job in a different state. I don't think I really had an appreciation for my cultural heritage and background until I was in college. I went to Florida State University and I loved the experience. I loved being on campus, but it was challenging because I didn't go to school with too many people from my high school. And so really, when I was at Florida State, the Hispanic Latino Student Union, since renamed Latinx Student Union, they became my family and sort of a community that I was able to really find myself and my abilities as a leader that I think kind of put me on this trajectory for a career in HR as I think back on it.
I love that because I hear that a lot from certain college experiences where it is that community that our guests have really found their footing, really found their community, and then that helped feel like they had presence and purpose to be there because it can be isolating, this journey.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting trying to find your independence when you're leaving home as a Latina, right? Like I'm the oldest daughter in my family, and I'm also the first child in my family. So I'm the oldest of three. And so when I went to college, I very much was like, yes, this is my time to shine. I'm going to find myself and, my family's back home, but I'm going to go out and do me. And I never really realized like how much support they gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different when you step outside the house and you realize, there's a whole different world that perhaps our upbringing doesn't necessarily prepare us for because we think we're living the same one, but it really becomes difficult when you realize, oh no, I'm all alone in this. As we talk about often, right? Being the first daughter comes with its own expectations, its own, I wouldn't say heaviness. It can be because you're doing a lot for the family. Did you go into HR right away? Is that something that you felt right away, or where did that come from?
No, so that actually came after graduation. I tend to do things a little bit out of order in my life. And so my degree is in social science with an emphasis on public service. Basically, I ended up taking coursework that was focused on political science, public policy, and sociology, and understanding how the different systems that we exist in and are affected and kind of shaped by work. But when I graduated, I didn't find a job that I felt comfortable with. I was originally going to do like a teaching position, but then my family kind of took me out of that. The gentle guidance and poking and so I ended up moving back home and was taking an internship in HR. It was at an organization where they allowed me the freedom and autonomy. They said, hey, you're our intern in HR. Build us an internship program. And that ended up being...
okay. A little out of scope, but okay.
It was a different approach, but that's kind of how the CEO thought about certain things, is he was very much like big picture, sort of what can we do differently or what can we tackle in a different way in order to continue growing the business. As an intern, I later realized that this was more of a needs analysis. Like there were words for my approach professionally that I was using. I did interviews. I asked them what value they thought they could get out of an intern, put together a whole proposal to go over with the CEO and the HR director at the time. And from there, they gave me feedback and we adjusted accordingly. And it ended up being probably still to this day, like one of the highlights of my career was being given that opportunity with very broad scope and sort of freedom.
I was thinking that's a lot of autonomy to have, especially right out of school. In some ways, some people might feel like overwhelmed by it, feel like they aren't worthy of doing it, but it seems like you just took it and ran with it, seeing the opportunity.
Yeah, I was grateful for the opportunity. Definitely felt like in the moment, it was more so about, okay, how do I get this work done? Right? How do I make it happen and make it work? Because something that I pride myself on, especially as I've built this career in HR, is I want to be a person who can be trusted, right? By all stakeholders within the relationship. And so it was really interesting being given that opportunity so early on, because that means that I had a direct line of communication to the highest level at the company. But then also I gave a voice to people who maybe would not have been involved in the process had I not been the person to give them this opportunity.
Oh, I want to come back to that. That's really interesting because I think even for corporate employees, HR is this void and enigma that we don't really appreciate or understand all the roles that HR plays. But it's also standing like in your process from right before university to what you did immediately. It seems like what you were studying goes hand in hand. Like you already came with some kind of understanding of all the different people involved in society, and now you have this opportunity to give them voice. Does that correlate?
I would say amplifying their own voices, right? I'm taking what they have shared with me and sharing that maybe with ideally some influencers or people who have more of a decision-making authority, positional power, that maybe the message kind of resonates better. Looking back at my career now and sort of the things that I have done in my life, even in my childhood, right? I think maybe I was always meant to be in this place. I just didn't know what it was or what it looked like, because in like the 4th grade, I want to say, my mom could probably give this story a lot more detail than I can now, but in the 4th grade, I became a peer mediator in my elementary school. Me and another kid, we were taught, conflict resolution skills. And if something happened in the class, like we were the people who would listen to both sides and help them try to talk through that as much as you can in elementary school. In college, when I was at Florida State, I held a role before leading. Eventually, I led the Hispanic Latino Student Union. I was like the director of the organization.
Amazing.
But before that, I was the internal relations officer. And guess what my job was? To understand event planning policies as it related to budgeting and the school and how our fees were allocated in order to support the people who were putting on the programming. So I basically got to be a conduit to facilitate a group of, I think it was like 10 other students who were the ones coming with the ideas, programs. But they came to me for, the policies and understanding how do I make this a reality, and kind of like that coaching, which is absolutely critical and has been essential to what I do afterwards. But I didn't know, or HR was never on my roadmap really until I committed to that internship and showed up on day one.
Your universe has it all laid out for you. It knows your personality and is giving you these opportunities that you yourself had to say, yes, I'll take it on, even from the 4th grade. That is amazing. But it seems very inherent to your personality. And your universe is here. Oh, do this next and do this next. Because there's not enough people out there saying, these are your skills. This is where that would work best. And looking at professions and careers in that way. But I love your fortitude. I love your proactive, I'm just going to take this on. And to me, that position requires a lot of intelligence because you're learning the organization and you have to digest all the legal and technical and business organization understanding of it, and then be able to translate that and incorporate it with who it's affecting so that they benefit and they understand. And like you say, in college, they can implement what they want within the organization. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I have no exposure to HR. I never did corporate, but I'm getting to learn it really fast with you, and I find this is fascinating.
Yeah, HR is, you kind of call it very accurately, it's kind of the gray area, right? People only hear like a certain level of what it means to be in HR. And it's very rare that employees kind of take a moment to sit back and think about, well, what is Georgette's experience like in this conversation? And that's sort of a product of the position, right? Like, I almost think about it as like it's a burden of leadership where, I have to help people process some very, contentious emotion sometimes. But then I'm also the person who gets to be there and help them celebrate when really great moments happen. But people tend to only see us and think of us in the negative. And sometimes that's warranted, right? Because no HR team is perfect. And we are always just, yes, we're trying to do our best out there. But we're working within a system that is not necessarily meant to empower all people. And so HR professionals kind of sit in the middle of, okay, well, how do we balance this? Because in order to have a sustainable, productive organization, we have to have people that stay and are excited about being here and feel like they're getting something out of that relationship. And so the way that I see employment is it is a two-way street. It doesn't always feel like a two-way street, right? Because if you're in survival mode, like, I get it. You got bills to pay, mouths to feed, things to do or buy. There's only so much you can do in that moment, right? But if you're in a position where you're not necessarily in survival mode, but you kind of feel like you're not maximizing or making the most of whatever it is, your potential, your time, those are very exciting conversations for me to have with employees, because I get to go in and really understand what is important to them, what are they looking for, and then how can I translate that to their manager or maybe their executive leader to make an impactful experience on all sides.
Yeah, because both sides ultimately benefit. But from a very outsider's point of view, I do only hear, and when you say HR, human resources, just to be clear, I do hear of the intervention or the involvement of the human resources department only when an employee feels, I'd say, threatened by, sexual harassment or being laid off, or, those are things that the news presents. So it's really a happy and empowering asset to have you here saying, no. We are here for you and what you want as well, because I think that gets overshadowed so much in organizations, or when they feel the pressure. There's always deadlines, things having to be done, and it's more of a machine rather than an experience.
And those things still happen in the background, right? Like we still have deadlines. Like open enrollment is a monster for people. So the benefits process, right? Like, because before employees get to enroll in their benefits, their HR and finance teams are negotiating with the insurance carriers on what those renewal rates look like and how much the cost is going to increase. So that is something that people don't really ever hear about. But HR in those instances is going to bat for you, negotiating as much as they can with as much influence as they have, right? So it all depends on the organization and where you're situated and what those power structures look like that impact our ability to be as successful or, a positive force for many of us, which is our goal. There's just so much nuance to the work that we do behind the scenes that people don't really get to see or hear about, which for me is very exciting, right? But
it's a lot to absorb. And it takes a lot of learning, which I don't feel that perhaps employees take advantage of. Like, learning this will actually be to their benefit and feel like they are involved in the company, that they do have relationship with the company through you, and that you're not just a way for the CEO to hide behind you and giving bad news. What would be a really gem of an involvement with HR that you would love people in the employee experience to understand is there for them? What is the gem that they probably don't know that they could use for their benefit?
We can be a source when their leadership is lacking in a certain capacity and they feel the need to connect with somebody who can hear them unbiasedly as we can, right? Because we all as individuals carry our own inherent biases, but I think the relationships, hopefully, that with employees that I have that have yielded the most benefit to those team members are the team members who have included me as part of their career journey, and not just somebody who they need to call in order to play defense.
I love that.
Somebody.
So that relationship is more personal than they really might acknowledge or accept. that you have a personal relationship that would benefit them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Now, your journey continues, obviously. Yes, that is a grand start, and it really set the tone for how you saw yourself in the human resources role. But you did start your own company. Let's talk about that.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. So I went through this leadership development program in my community called New Leaders Council Palm Beach. They're a national organization, but I connected with the local chapter. And basically, they are a program empowering and creating what they refer to as proximal leaders. So proximal being close in geographic location. And they are empowering professionals to be agents of change in their community. So we go through trainings on fundraising and, making the ask, because what does that look like? Ultimately, fundraising is a sales skill that we are helping cultivate, communication, understanding your locality, and what are the government resources that you can connect with, as well as for profit. So a lot of people who go through the program, they will typically not just accelerate within their roles, but they will also start their own nonprofit, maybe launch a sister organization, start a business, like in my case, or even run for public office after the program, because they want to facilitate people to make an impact in their local community. And so for me, that journey initially started with what I thought was going to be a nonprofit, because each of us has to have a capstone project, so a project that we work on throughout the term from a planning perspective. And I, the Latina in me, right? I was thinking that I had to give my blood, sweat, and tears in order to do something good for the world. That was, you see people less fortunate than you lend a hand in whatever way you can, right? Like, how do we lift each other up? Sometimes to our own detriment. And so it was through this program where my accountability group, they happened to both be Black women with their own businesses. And they were like, hey, you can actually sell these skills. Like, you don't have to just give this away. You can make money off of this. Like, what do you mean? I don't see myself as a business owner. I don't know anything about business. I went to school for social science. But the content of the program combined with their knowledge as well, because they were very open with me on, hey, this is where you start, focus on this, don't do this. Here's some stuff that I struggled with in the beginning. And so since that program in 2019, we are still they are my best friends. Now, so we have remained connected and continue to support and push each other's business goal throughout. But really, I started it based on the concept of my original internship. So the original name of my business was called Intern Gal, and I wanted to help create opportunities for others while addressing those shortage of talent within the community. So getting college students connected to internship opportunities and helping other small businesses open the door to find that talent and make the most out of that by having a program with a more intentional approach to it.
Oh, I love that. Now, was that first focus, was that given towards the Latina community? Was it to include the underrepresented community into coming up into this very pivotal and much needed position?
I would say it wasn't specific to the Latino community, but more broadly, any underrepresented demographic of students, because it was very reflective of my college experience with HLSU, which was the Hispanic Latino Student Union at the time, and how we were always looking for internships and always interviewing and coaching each other, and how do we get our foot in the door here, and who can you introduce us to? So a way to address that experience was by getting with the business owners first. They were my targets and my clients, so that I could help them introduce them to, hey, you don't have a recruitment strategy. Let's talk about what universities or schools you can market to in order to gain access to that talent.
Oh, I love that. It's you're fixing the pipeline.
That was my goal, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, that was the goal.
Yeah.
But then these women and your best friends now really empowered you to almost go bigger?
Yeah.
And did that make the pipeline that much stronger, larger?
So this kind of goes on a bit of a tangent as it relates to the name. But Intern Gal was always a DBA. I had a hyper focus at the time in order to get comfortable with the idea of being a business owner and offering one service that I knew I could execute because of my prior work history. But when I went to name the business, it has always existed as Algo HR and Training LLC. Very excited about this. Because even though internships was my sort of medium, right? At the end of the day, I always knew I wanted to grow more and I wanted to expand and make a bigger impact. I just didn't know, I didn't trust myself in the beginning to be able to communicate that since I was still an early career professional. So I felt more comfortable with the one offer, one service, one focus. Whereas as I was engaging with different clients and customers, they weren't coming to me because they wanted an internship. They were coming to me because they wanted help creating job description or coaching a team member or, creating some sort of like compliance organizational process as it relates to how they were managing their team that may have included interns, but a lot of times didn't. And so really the market told me, hey, we need more. We need a broader scope. And so it allowed me the opportunity to go back after I had my son. And once I was ready to jump back in to entrepreneurship, because I already had the name, I knew what my mission was going to be sort of from the beginning in a roundabout way. And so the reason I call it Algo Más was because I wanted to bring something more to the world of work, right? Like that care and connection through HR in order to positively impact the workplaces so that they can still get their goals, right? Like, I want to be super, super clear. When HR cares, it's not because we only care about the people. HR cares because we care about the success of the business, and we know that the way to do that is through people. Right? I think our objective is to facilitate the success of the company. But in order to do that, we have to impact the people and how they work.
There it is. Again, your universe guiding you along the way. Already knew in your head what you wanted, but you're like this bridge. You're the bridge between the employees and the company, and understanding that in order to make the best experience for the employees, you have to have a successful company to be able to provide the most for them and yet because of them. And I think that is something that greatly gets overlooked. And I'm wondering, let's go back to the comunidad a little bit. As a Latina, and knowing the cultura and knowing a lot of things that come with it, there must be for you this element of really breaking through those cultural mindsets for employees, at least in the Latina community, where you can really encourage them perhaps to speak up, to participate and be okay with feeling they can engage a conversation without the threat of being fired, those kind of conversations. What do you think about that?
I think it's critical. I think it's something I have already started to unlearn and sort of unpack for myself. And that has completely changed how I approach my team, in essence, because I can't tell you how many times people say like, wow, this happened. I'm like, but did you tell them that this happened? Did you tell them that this is how you felt or how you took it? And a lot of times the answer is no, right? Because they don't feel psychologically safe yet. I'm not immune to that either, right? I have just gotten more comfortable with my own power and my own sort of perspective. And every time I talk to somebody who's kind of going through that challenge, it's something I'm very intentional about, like, hey, let's talk about work and what this means to you, because you're having this problem. You're not wanting to address it. You're coming to me. You don't want me to address it either. And I'm trying to respect that. So what does this look like? Like, what action can we take here? And so for some people, it's getting comfortable with giving feedback and that speaking up and how they can speak up in a way that is ideal for their target audience or their stakeholder. For other people, it's as simple as taking time off. so many people who I speak to in corporate feel that if they are not working all day, every day, and even sometimes on the weekend, right?
Right.
Especially as, salaried employees, they're not tied to hours, but there's still some sort of side eye if they don't work at least 40 hours, which is a whole other discussion. And so what I remind people is like, well, what do you enjoy of your life? What do you wish you had time to do? Because you have X amount of day in the year to be able to use. Do you like vacations? Do you feel like you are consistently burning out every few weeks or every couple of months? Let's talk about what it is that you're experiencing and how can we strategically use time off as a vehicle to create some more space and distance between you and the work that you're encountering. And also, work is a tool for us to achieve things, right?
Right.
It's the money, it's the bills, it's whatever livelihood. I had one person tell me pretty early on in my career, she was like, I don't care about being at work. Like I'm good at what I do, but that's not my bread and butter. I am a concerts girl. I said, okay. But her response, her security in her response always stuck with me. Because at the time where I was engaging with her, I was still in the like, no, I'm just grateful to be here mentality, which I am. I can have gratitude for my employment. Right. But employment, again, is a two-way relationship. And so I'm still looking to get something out of it. And so depending on where you are in life, that might change. It might be PTO, it might be salary, it might be benefits, it might be retirement, it might be like even childcare benefits for people who work within the school system who can get discounted to, premium education or what that looks like. And so every person's why is different. And so therefore we as HR professionals, we have to remember that we're not talking to everybody, right? Just because somebody's hourly or salary, yes, you can do some population breakdown, but ultimately we're talking to a human at the end of the day who might have dreams or goals or aspirations, or whose dreams, goals, and aspirations have been crushed. And that's why it's impacting their ability to perform.
Yes. Oh, I love that last bit, because I was thinking even for myself and here today with the discussion rising about how much women put out unpaid, how much the caregiver role they are, how much of the home person they are, how much of the relationship builder, the social connection builder, how much goes unpaid, and the detriment to our own financial independence and gain from that. But like you were saying at the very beginning, breaking down that mindset from what we have been raised in, from what we have been told by society, and putting ourselves first with value, and we are worthy of the best. I love that role for HR. I think you should base your job finding people on the HR department and understanding, is there a person like you in that department who really sees the beauty of the individual and the value and worth of the individual for themselves and how the company can correlate with them in that relationship. I told you this was going to be joyful. It just is so exciting to hear that. It just takes a completely different spin, because I have to say that, again, many of the guests here on the podcast left corporate. A lot of them left corporate because of burnout, because for all the different reasons you've been discussing, felt like they couldn't not respond to an email at 3 a.m. or they couldn't take time off, or even, and it's all legitimate, because we have seen women, especially in taking maternity leave, lose their positions, lose their gains in their career, and be sidelined upon their return. It's all very valid. But having a strength like your own, and I'm so grateful that you also have the business, so that I think, because with the business, I would feel, coming to you with you being the owner of your own business, I would feel that there is more of an intimate relationship, such that I could be vulnerable. There is no threat. You are obviously on that person's side. Is that part of the ability as a small business owner?
Absolutely. I think the reason why I have the business and continue to have the business and, is because there's only so much you can do when you work in one company. And because what we are taught is to find a good job and stay there for as long as they will have you.
With benefits.
And with benefits, yes. And don't get me wrong.
1K becomes the only thing.
The system is the system. I am not under any illusions as to how this works. But what's nice about it is because I get to connect with people in such a personal way, right? Like the way that I talk with you is the way that I talk to my clients, is the way that I talk to my employees. I'm not good at like poker face or some of the other like masking thing. If I have to mask, I just won't speak because I can't not share how I feel.
Because you're able to speak as an employee in a company, as the bridge between employees and the leadership, and also as a small business owner. For people who may be on that leave corporate, I'll start my own business mentality, what would you share with that mindset?
I think if you feel comfortable financially and you can manage that, like cutting the cord and going for it, by all means. No one person is the same, right? I am a preparer. I'm a planner. I like to have certain things in place. And so in the event that I would ever leave my corporate job, I would make sure that I could handle the downturn of being an entrepreneur first, right? Because I think we also tend to glamorize that a little bit too. Of like, oh yeah, if it doesn't work in corporate, like go do your own thing. But business ownership is about way more than just the thing they're good at, right? And that's ultimately why a lot of businesses fail within the first 5 years is because we're not taught that as a widespread education or portion of our education.
Not at all.
And so people are making this transition without the appropriate resources to ensure their success. So my suggestion would be if you're thinking like whether or not it's time, have that, number that you work towards to set your financial future or short-term future to be comfortable, and then go for it. And then the worst thing that can happen is, no, it doesn't work. You go back into corporate and you still have amazing experience that you can speak to in an interview. That doesn't account for bias, right? So bias against entrepreneurs. So I guess my main point is like, go into it eyes wide open. Think about what are the impacts to you as an individual staying in corporate and your mental health and your financial health and spirit, all of the things.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And for you to go on your own. And if you go on your own, what are the things that you can put in place in order to maintain your financial wellness, your mental health, and your community support, right? I think sometimes we get, I'm muy rápido, like we jump before we jump before we're ready, or we've thought it through.
It's that same fight or flight. It's the same response. It's like, I can't handle this anymore. I'm just going to do it on my own without really, like you, planning, preparing, understanding what it takes and putting that in place, because you can burn out as an entrepreneur as well. Because like you said, it's a bigger role. Now you don't get handed your projects. You got to go find them yourself. You have to engage the clients. You have to contract with the clients. You got to make sure you get paid. There's a lot more to it. But I love in your own story, what rose to the top right away is that the baby steps. You implemented baby steps with much consideration to your own well-being and where you were in your life and what you acknowledged that you could take on in a way that still created this bad life for yourself. I think that's really important for everyone to listen to and really, you never know what comes out of these conversations, right? But that is a gem, like valuing the baby steps and not the cut and run. I'm going to be a six-figure, like you have so many people out there marketing, 6 figures in 5 months. It's like,
right.
Let's bring that down.
In 5 months, great. But what is your plan to get there, right? That can be the goal, but what is your path to achieve that? And so that, I think we also have to get comfortable with accepting that things don't always work out in the way we might have expected, right? Like I went to school thinking I was going to be a nonprofit person or work in local government. That has not happened yet. Who knows? Maybe it might. Maybe we might come full circle and come back to it. But I think we also have to be able to accept that when things aren't working, we need to make a change in order to do that, right? Because I have a coworker who says this all the time. She's like, what we don't address, we accept. We are choosing this path at this point.
Oh, that's powerful. Ooh, that's powerful. I did want to just go right deep dive into DEI because on 2 points. In one regard, being from the comunidad, I think especially, and all the underrepresented communities, and even women in general, where we feel the society's understanding of DEI is, oh, you get an easy pass. Oh, it's just, you automatically get the role, or you took someone else's job, or that's the only way you were going to get a scholarship into college, which is very aggravating. And now seeing it all be taken away, the Title IX, the scholarships, the roles of corporate taking out their DEI departments, and Harvard today just firing all the slavery recognition history instructors. It's just, it just really is spotlighting, highlighting the need to have society understand the real intent of the DEI. And honestly, we do come with a lot more skill already intact just from our upbringing that we don't need help with. We just need y'all to get out of the way. What's been your experience, or have you had experience with corporates, DEI, or any other organization's approach to DEI?
While I'm disheartened by a lot of the things that have been happening or have been being shared, right, and across the news cycle with different companies rolling back DEI initiatives, DEI staffing, I have very complex feelings on the matter. Honestly, is it ignorance that people don't understand DEI? I don't know. You know, I've heard the quote that to a privileged person, accountability can feel like oppression to someone.
I love that. Yes.
And, you know, I think that's very, very real. I also think some of the things that we're seeing were always there, but now there's room and space to acknowledge how certain organizations or leaders publicly feel about equity work. And, you know, in my experience, DEI is about making work for everybody, right? It's about making our communities work for everybody. It's not about pitting one group against the other. It's about understanding how these systems that one group built impact the society at large, right? Because intersectionality is a real thing, right? Like, and how our identities layer over each other is very real. Just because a person's white doesn't necessarily mean that they are protected, right? We have classism. We have gender. differences. We have disabilities in conversation. We have mental health, right? Like there's so much nuance that goes into our world. And as shocking as it is for some, it's not all that shocking for those who have been trying to push this work forward and made entire careers of it. I've always cared about an inclusive space, but I haven't formally been in a DEI role until recently, right? There are people who have been doing this work for over 20 years. Or even more, since the beginning of our history's time, right? You can go back and trace ancestry to the origins. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't ever want to feel shame about ourselves as people. But if you're not open to understanding and have a deep level of empathy for the people, for the other human beings who exist around you, then it's going to be a tough conversation.
Yeah, and I like to raise it beyond empathy. And it's like, you have to understand that because of what they've come through in life, in learning how to really expand and be part of this society from whatever they're bringing with them, that they therefore have a lot more skill set because nothing's been given to them. You have to appreciate that the skills in having to navigate this world where it's not intended to be you're included gives you a higher skill set. And that skill set will benefit the society as a whole. Like you're bringing a whole different intelligence to the conversation that wouldn't be there otherwise. And that is the power of diversity. That is the power of inclusion. That is the power of giving equity to everyone, because we're working as a lesser society without everyone involved. It may be what the powers that have it now feel is more comfortable for them, but it's lesser. What do you think we as a society in general can do if the platform isn't there? What is that action that people should be taking in order to always create that environment?
I think find more spaces of community, and if there aren't any, then doing the work to create more. Because with all of the regulations that have come out and are, I'm sure, going to continue coming out, it's more important than ever for us to be able to talk to each other and be able to hold a conversation where there are differing perspectives, right? Because DEI is important to me and DEI is important to you, but just because we feel similarly doesn't mean that we would approach the problem or any challenges in the exact same way. And so I think we have to be more open to receiving a disagreement and acknowledging that that is inevitable. Anytime you put people together, there's conflict. That's why I think human resources is so important within any company, because we don't exist in a vacuum. Yeah. And so when we feel so isolated, alone, and powerless, that is when power structures are most effective, right? So we need to continue to pursue these opportunities for connection, so that, we can come together. We might disagree, but who knows? We might have a third person who comes in and says, oh, well, actually, I can do this, or we can do this. And we might, out of the three of us, one of us might run for local government and the other person might be the campaign manager, right? And it's very intentional. I think it's basically what we have to do is talk to each other and be intentional about protecting each other, right? Staying informed, not doom scrolling, not saying doom scroll for the sake of being online. Because that's
more
not
local,
anybody.
maybe.
Yeah, but focus on the local, right? If federal feels too big, because sometimes it does.
Huge.
And if state feels too big, right, then start local. Start with your city, start with your county, and then work your way up. And I need people to vote. Voter participation is so significant. And I understand that people have been disillusioned, disempowered, and disrespected continuously from all walks of life. But it is more important now to go back and vote in order to protect these little pockets that we have of equity and empathy and inclusive environments, that we need to go out and use that voice intentionally, right? Those are the voices that we can have. The other side that I have, and I hope this is different,
of course,
is money. Our entire society is built around who has it, and how are they getting it, and how can they maintain it. So the best thing we can do is all pursue as much wealth generation as we can in order to leverage that for positive impacts, right? Like, I'm not saying let's hoard thousands of dollars only for myself and my family. I'm saying, no, let's come together and pool, and there's a candidate that we like, let's make sure we support that individual. Or there's a nonprofit organization that is looking for donations to impact children in schools or reading comprehension, or maybe it's on-the-job training, whatever it is, because there are nonprofit organizations for every kind of cause out there. But everything we want and need in life requires funding, and so it behooves us to seek more revenue stream than just corporate, right? So entrepreneurship may not be the right route either, but there's other ways out there. I'm not going to name them because I'm not a financial planner. I'm not giving financial advice, but find somebody whose values align to you and you're interested in their practices and see what you can learn from there, because I think that will also magnify our individual impact.
Oh, I love all that. When you said that last piece about not being the financial planner to it, I thought, panel. We need a panel. We need you speaking. And yes, I do see politics in your future, because you do have a way to just cut through to the obvious that we cannot see. When you speak of it, it sounds obvious. And I'm like, why aren't we already doing it then if it's so obvious? You have great leadership skills, great leadership ideas. You are going to run for office. I love that power you just gave. I love the hope you gave in saying that to us, because you're right. We feel totally stripped of our power federally. Things are happening that we have no control over, our states, our counties, and yet we always have the ability to gather locally in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and therein is power. I think that's also why we do the podcast. It's like, if you can find people you resonate with, you are not alone in this world. And it's too big to be alone in this world with that. And I do see people, especially because people have gone remote. You touched on conflict and anger. If you have to see someone in person every single day, it's very difficult to hold that level of anger when you have to deal with them, right?
In order to work remotely, right, you do have to be very intentional in how you communicate. And of course, like if we're not looking at each other on a screen and you can't see all my mannerisms, right, my tone might come across differently than like I'm on the phone. But I think people struggle because if you're working from home full time, you're in your house or in your office or wherever you are, and you're not really talking to another human being outside of that. But I think that's because we have actually, the way our society has shifted has limited the amount of like community spaces in which we can exist without having to pay for it, right? So remote work poses a challenge. So even though it's been proven that it's been better from a, like, in some cases from a work-life perspective, I'm able to handle my childcare or care for an elderly parent, or even just be home for people to do stuff around the house. I don't have to take a whole day or a half day anymore of PTO if I work from home. Like there are lots of benefits to the individual, but company management styles and systems are not necessarily set up to be effective when you're not having to intentionally talk to each other and coach and understand. And they might not have the right visibility as to the thing, right? I'm going to pause here because I could go on and on.
I love this conversation. It is such a hopeful, joyful conversation. And who thought it would be about HR? Like, this is amazing. Oh, we have learned so much about you. I think in having you present like this, we can definitely feel who you are. We definitely get this sense of empowerment. You bring a lot of energy to us in that I feel like we could do anything. That you would be behind us. I love it.
Yeah. And that's exactly the feeling that we need, right? I read We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. Just kind of radicalized me and changed my outlook of more one of self-determination, right? I've always been supportive of other people and their journeys and wanting to help them get to their next step. But I think particularly reading that book and some of the other podcasts and conversations that I'm having with people and just my general life path, I have become more assured in my own power. And now it's more about not just supporting other people's growth, but reminding them of that, because we get so stuck in our day-to-day and we forget that. And that's how, stuff happens and will continue to happen.
I love that. Yes, we're in a hard pause. Let that sink in. You do have the power, and we do have more power when we gather in small communities, and we do have impact. And again, the baby steps will get you further. Just start, right? Just start. What is something we would never guess about you? Because you just have this, you plan, you're organized, you have experience, you have visions, and you get to them. What would be something that we'd go, wait, what?
Well, let's see. I am vision. I am organized. Exactly what you said. My closet does not support that statement. My house does not necessarily. The state of my house. Listen, my husband is a wonderful human being, and he is so neat and tidy, and he challenges the norms of Latino men and what they do.
Absolutely.
And we need more of that out there. My contribution is paying for the cleaning lady at the house. Because I like to think it's because I'm so mission driven that,
that's just not, that's something that you delegate. Yeah, that's the delegate. You're showing us right off the bat. No, yes, you can do it. Acknowledge your skill, but no, delegate. That's hilarious. That makes me want to open the closet behind you.
Oh, no, you don't. Threw it all out there.
We've seen your vision. You have this huge vision for what we as a community could be, as a society can be, as a Latina comunidad can be, also for yourself and your family. But leaving all that behind and seeing you individually walk through a portal into a different space, what does that look like for you?
A different space.
A different space and time.
Interesting. See, there's my first impression, and then the HR person in me wants to ask clarifying questions. So I understand.
Okay,
so
they're welcome.
My first impression is, if I were in a different space and I'm choosing to interpret space as career, in this particular moment, I think it would be urban planning and design, like how we design our communities. That was always something that was part of the curriculum in my college degree. And I had considered going to do a master's, but I wasn't the best student. So the master's was not in my cards at the time. But if I were to ever have a second career outside of HR, I think I would explore that, or involving myself in community organizations that impact that.
Ooh, I love that. That would be really exciting. You definitely have the skill level for creating those urban spaces because you know what's needed.
Do you ever, like when you're driving, do you ever say to yourself, like, why did they put a road here? Why did they put a stoplight here? All of those are decisions. They are conscious choices that other people make. And to me, that's fascinating. I'm like, how did we get here, and how could we improve this, right? Because with everything we do, there's always unintended impacts and consequences. And so what are those things, and how can we address or mitigate those in the future? So from a career perspective, I'd say that. Yeah. Was that the intention of your question, though? Or what direction
could
were
be
you?
Well, see, that's the beauty of it, because I find that it provokes whatever is just right under the surface for people, because it is vague and it is open-ended and it could be anything. So what's the first thing that comes to their mind? What's the best way to contact you? Where can they find out more about what you know, what you do? Give us all that information.
Absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn. I have both an individual profile, Georgette Cartagena, and a business profile. So you can also follow Algo Más HR on there, as well as at Algo Más HR on Instagram. I'm on Threads as well with the same name, Algo Más HR. And then I would just encourage anybody who's interested in looking at their systems, even if it's an audit of just what does HR look like within your organization, to check out my website, www.algomashr.com. There we can set up a call or do a quick paid consultation and just kind of peel the onions together.
Yes. Okay. Peel the onions together. That is actually one of my statements someone told me I say a lot, because
See, we were meant to be friends.
I get you so much. We could go on down the line forever on that, but we will make sure all of that is in the show notes and linked to you directly. So we want to make sure it's easy access to get to. I am fascinated. I am going to jump on your website and learn more because I am fascinated. Algo más, something more for you, something more for everybody, something more for us as a society to lean in and support each other, understand each other. I love this. The value is amazing, immense. The impact is immense. How I understand it fuller. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you so much for, again, the time and the conversation. This has gone in so many directions. But I love how you tied it all together. And just thank you for being, again, an amplifier for our community, right? Because every person who comes onto your show is using their own voice and words and experiences, but you're just spreading it out.
Thank you for that. Yes. No, it has always been a platform to amplify, to get the true stories and to give presence to our ancestors in this current day and acknowledging why we're here. Join us next week as we close out our March Women's History Month with another brilliant woman redefining our spaces in places you don't expect. She not only broke through barriers, but has already built an entirely new ecosystem for the generations here and ready to take on their leadership through her personal brand of KNN. Kelsey Nicole Nelson comes from a strong lineage of Black excellence that inspires her to keep creating opportunity through her vision of a better world. Kelsey is a multi-award-winning journalist and renowned speaker who followed her passion of sports as a live broadcaster and reporter. Kelsey has covered some of the premier sporting events, including the WNBA Finals, NBA Finals, and the Super Bowl, interviewing the world's top athletes. All in time for Women's March Madness at the end of this month, whose watching audience last year outpaced the men's. Just saying. But Kelsey doesn't stop there. This multifaceted gem inspires developing minds as a professor at George Washington University School of Media and Public Relations in Sports Media, and shares how winning her beauty pageant title wasn't all about the tiara and fame and fortune. It was to sharpen her public speaking skills. It comes from her deep authenticity expressed in her own words. What do you want to be remembered by? After listening to Kelsey, you may feel compelled to walk out into the world with light and positivity to inspire your community. So go out now and step into your truth. Ciao. We love that you have subscribed to this podcast and continue to champion women who understand the life of all things Latina. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Encuentras Your Voice podcast so you don't miss a single episode. They will automatically drop into your listening device each week, and we'd really appreciate if you take a moment to add to the reviews that we already have. Tell us what you like, tell us what you're hoping to hear, and we will get there. Share this with your friends and family to help us grow our comunidad, and keep following us on our social media to Encuentras Your Voice. We are so grateful to you for helping us grow this community and would love to learn of all the amazing Latinas who you know are creating the world we thrive in. So reach out to me on social media at Encuentras Your Voice, and let's keep leaning into our authenticity in pride. Help us make Encuentras Your Voice the place where you are 100% represented.